Project Management for the Masses podcast, episode 38. Soft skills and getting people to work together with Geoff Crane.
Project managers, have you ever felt like you should get that promotion or a better job? Start a business, write that book. Have you ever felt you were made for more but didn't know where to start?
Welcome to the PM for the Masses podcast with your host, Caesar Abaid.
Learn from the experts, think outside the box, have a voice, network, and be extraordinary.
PM for the Masses podcast.
Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to the Project Management for the Masses podcast. My name is Caesar Abaid, your host, and this show is your weekly reminder that your career matters more than your job, and that your life is a project, and you are the manager. Whether you work for a company or for yourself, your job stability is really just your ability to land your next gig. So, join me in practicing intentional, planned, and value-adding relevance, starting right now. It is a brand new week, even though it's Monday night here, and I'm super excited to bring you my new friend, Geoff Crane. We had a great conversation around soft skills and getting people to work together. And he also shares a little bit of his story, and he answers the Project Management for the Masses 6 questions. It's a bit of a longer interview, so how about we get right to it?
Special guest coming up next. pmforthemasses.com. pmforthemasses.com.
Geoff Crane is a former senior project portfolio manager who has ties to some of the world's largest banks and professional services firms. A staunch believer in the value of soft skills over hard skills, he has returned to university to pursue a doctorate in clinical psychology. Unable to stay away from the action, or take himself too seriously, Geoff continues to help aspiring executives organize their project work and is an adjunct professor of project management at Durham College in Ontario, Canada. And Geoff is on the line with me today from his home in Peterborough, Ontario. Good morning, Geoff. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Caesar. How about yourself?
I am doing good. I actually just rolled out of bed half an hour ago, too. You just told me that.
Awesome.
It's Friday. You know, it's Friday at 10 in the morning, and I record from home, so it doesn't make any sense to go to the office first, you know?
Nice.
So I might as well sleep in a little bit. So, Geoff, the first time I heard about you was through Elizabeth Herron, actually. You know,
okay.
I told her that I was starting the podcast, and she said, you need to have Geoff on the show. And we've been talking back and forth since then, I think, right? It's been, I don't know, a year and a half now.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
So it's great to finally have you on the show. So how are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. I will apologize. Actually, I have a dog in the background who might be shaking a little bit, so I'll try to keep him quiet.
That's fine. Yeah, I heard that chain there. So is it chained to the chair or something? All right, Geoff. So how about this? How about you tell us a little bit about your background and in project management and what you do today?
Sure. I've been managing projects for about 25 years. I got my start when I joined Citibank. I moved over. I started in Toronto, and then I moved to Tokyo. What happened was the equities desk I was supporting up and quit to form their own company. So they decided they didn't really know what to do with me. So they said, "How's Tokyo grab you?" I said, "Sure." I was only about 25, so it was really exciting. I moved to Tokyo to help out with a market data transition for about 3 months. And then I moved down to Singapore, where I wound up building the largest trading floor of its kind in Asia. And I was given 3 months to do that. So that was kind of my introduction to project management. And it was sort of, trial by fire. Oh, my God, how am I going to do this kind of thing? But they liked what I did, and I stayed there for about 10 years. And I worked for different banks in Singapore. I stayed with Citibank for a while, but then I moved to the Development Bank of Singapore, DBS Bank. And after 10 years of that, I moved home and took a role as a senior project manager at IBM in Toronto. And after that, in 2009, I decided to go back to university. And while I'm there, I'm still there. I'm teaching part-time at Durham College in Oshawa.
Cool. Now, let me take you back to Singapore there a second.
Sure.
You said something, and I really believe that our lives are made of little choices and little moments that just will take us in a direction that will set the pace for the rest of it. When you're asked to build a trade floor in 3 months, and you said that was your introduction to project management, did you know what project management was back then? Did you have any idea?
I knew nothing. I knew nothing at all when I started.
So how did you manage that?
Wow, it was I sort of had a high level scope, and what the people before me had done was they'd already dynamited out this vault. It was this massive vault in the space that was originally intended for cash. So I got to miss the exciting blow up. But when I came, I had this great big empty space. All my vendors had been selected. The guys on the ground had actually done a lot of the pre-work for me. So it was just a matter of getting everything done and pulling myself in like a million different directions to try and figure, okay, so I've got to worry about market data. I've got to worry about the plumbing. I've got to worry about the all the computers that are going to be on the desks, the structured cabling. Like just trying to keep track of it all was very, very difficult when I had no kind of, no kind of tools or planning skills. So basically, it was just a lot of hours at the time.
And keeping track of everything, writing things down, and trying to stay organized, I guess.
Exactly. But one thing that happened was, because of this, there were other people at the bank who did know about project management, and they were sort of teaching me little pieces here and there. And then I discovered the PMI and I discovered the PMBOK, and oh wow, this makes things a lot easier, doesn't it? Right. So over time, I became a lot more skilled, and the stress of doing a job like that without skills really diminished.
Now, Geoff, I've been to your website several times, and I recommend everybody to go and check papercutpm.com. Oh, first of all, what's up with Papercut PM?
So I called myself online the Papercut Project Manager. The idea is that projects can be very, very painful, and if they're not managed correctly. And I think everybody can relate to a paper cut. Everybody knows exactly just how nasty that stings. And I always felt that projects could be like that if they were managed unchecked.
And the vibe I get from your website is playful, joyful, funny type of vibe, and I think this is one of the values that you bring to what you do. Is I'm looking at your profile picture here. You're just screaming with your hands on your head. It's very funny. So, and you told me before we recorded this about a defining moment in your career. When a friend of yours from Citibank hired you. Can you share with us that story? I thought that was fascinating.
Sure. So this was early on in my career, and a friend of mine from Citibank had actually hired me over to DBS Bank to manage a portfolio of investment banking products. And I had no experience with the particular platform on which we'd be running. I had a lot of experience in investment banking in general, but all of a sudden I'm thrust sort of at this ERP platform called Murex. I'd never seen it before, never heard of it before. And I just had to ask him one day, after I'd been working with him for a while, I said, why me? Why did you pick me for this? I'm sure there's lots of other people who are more qualified to govern this portfolio. So he says to me, this was Gary. He was very playful. He says, Geoff, some people bring like these fantastic technological skills to the table. Some people have like unbelievable business acumen, and some people, they have like these amazing organizational skills. You don't actually have any of those things. And I sort of like blinked at him, right? Says, but you get people to work together like nobody I've ever met before. We've tried all of those other things and they're just not working. And in that particular case, that was really one of the big challenges. I was working in a very silo-based culture. People were, looking after their own individual work packets, but didn't want to be bothered talking to anybody else or be responsible for anybody else's output. And I guess the problem there was when you're working on an ERP, one person's input is another person's output, and everything is all tied together so closely. You can't separate it, and you can't work in a silo-based culture. So yeah, I mean, getting people to work together, that was the first gigantic hurdle that we had to get through. Once we had that, I mean, we already had smart people, and we had people who were organized, and had people who knew about the deep science of investment banking. We had people who understood Murex. It was getting them sort of working as one unit, as one big team that made the thing start to function.
How do you get people to work together?
Well, that's a challenge in itself, isn't it?
Simple question. How long do you have,
Yeah, really. Well, see, I have a bit of an advantage. My dad was actually a school teacher. And I know that sounds completely unrelated, but he taught me a lot of things about, if you've got a classroom of people and you need to teach them something, you can't just teach them individually. You don't have the time and you don't have the resources to, spend 8 hours a day simultaneously with every individual kid. So there are a lot of group techniques that he was able to convey to me when I called him and asked. And, for example, there was this one situation we had at DBS where the risk department wasn't getting their risk reports on time. And it sounds like really simple, right? It's not that big a deal, but it's really annoying when every morning the risk department comes in, oh, great, no risk reports. And they have to call up, and then my people have to figure out, oh, we didn't know, and figure out where the reports were and what happened and get them over. So by this time, an hour, sometimes 2 hours in every morning has been lost. So it's a very big inconvenience for our customers. So my approach to that was I picked individual people. I also deliberately chose people who I knew were kind of resistant to working with one another. And I basically locked them in a boardroom with the challenge. I wanted two solutions. First of all, I wanted to know how we would be able to take ownership of getting those reports to the risk department before they were due. And if we couldn't, that we would actually have somebody call them up and say, your risk reports are running a bit late. We will have them to you by 9:30 or 10 o'clock or whatever time. I want a solution for that. Second, I want a solution on how we're going to make sure that these things are never late anymore, right? I think I gave them like 4 days and locked them in a room and asked them to present it to me on Friday or something like that. And it was great. It worked out terrifically. These were people who had kind of been resistant to working with one another. All of a sudden, they're forced to create something for me. And they presented it to me. I thought it was awesome. We took it to the risk department and they loved it. And after that, that problem just kind of went away. So that was one thing that we did.
That sounds fascinating. So, a couple of things. So, what do you think the secret is in that? Was it the fact that you gave them a deadline? You asked them to be creative together, or what was it?
Well, I think my primary instruction was that I wanted them to do it together, and that meant that they would have an opportunity to self-organize, right? Like, I mean, I'm not going to micromanage them and say, okay, Bob, you're going to be the team lead on this. You're going to, this is going to be your role. This is going to be Susan's role, and here's how I want you to do it. I didn't give them any of that. I put them in a room, told them that they had to work together, and what they did was up to them. But I gave them very clear parameters of what I wanted.
Mm-hmm. I do that with my kids, at bedtime. We're going to read the book that they both agree on that we should read. If they can't agree on the book, then we don't read it. And,
sure.
And it's amazing how agreeable they can get. If
it's true.
and also it also teaches them leadership a little bit. It's like, okay, if you really want to read this book, how can I convince this other person? And I think the same goes for teams. When you force them to be creative and make a decision together, then it sparks these leadership and problem solving skills, don't you think?
Yeah.
Right. So you told me about soft skills, and you wanted to let everybody know something that's really important about soft skills, and that has to do with it being easy during quiet times. Can you elaborate on that?
I guess my position on that. Soft skills, somebody asked me once, why are soft skills so hard for a lot of people? And I don't think that soft skills are. I think most people are, generally pretty good at interacting with other humans. The question is, can they do that very same thing under stress? That's where I think people tend to fall down. For example, in my whole life, across all facets of my life, I think I've maybe only met one or two people who made me sort of generally feel weird or uncomfortable when they introduced themselves. That's like two or three people out of, my entire life. So I think most people can kind of carry that. But what I see happen is when the stress is on, people all of a sudden start, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, people. When the stress is on, people all of a sudden just start forgetting. Right? They forget how to listen. They forget how to just generally be nice. They forget how to interact, and all of a sudden, their stress becomes the priority. And here's the problem: if you're a leader, your people need you to be able to put your stress aside and give them whatever it is they need, whatever that happens to be. Right? So if if I start freaking out and worrying about my deadlines and my issues, my people are sitting there like, well, what about us? What is it? Yeah, how are you going to address our needs? And in a lot of cases, from a team's perspective, it's that vision. What is the vision that you're trying to communicate? I think that's where people tend to fall down, where soft skills are concerned. Mm-hmm. That was the long, rambly explanation, but hopefully that worked.
No, makes sense. Yeah. Now, Geoff, you that project that you mentioned that you were brought in and to get people to work together. What are the first things, let's see, for somebody who's listening right now and dreams of becoming a project manager, being hired in a similar situation where they're brought in to a team that's already there, mm-hmm. and now they have to exercise authority and get people to do things. What is the first thing people should do when they get into that company, for example, to kind of set the pace for leadership?
Well, the biggest challenge is really building those relationships, building the foundation of those relationships. I was given some very good advice by the same guy who told me that I lacked other skills, but was able to get people to work together. What he told me was he was going away for a week. When he came back, he wanted me to be able to talk about each and every one of my people. Now, I had an army of 60 in that place. What he didn't care, whether they were my one down, my two down. He wanted me to tell him what they all did, something about them personally. And you know what? It was really great advice. What I wound up doing was spending about 15 to 20 minutes with each and every single last one of them. And I asked them questions about their role, what they did at the bank, what they would like to see different. I asked them things about their personal interests. And when Gary came back, he never asked me, mm-hmm. The question that he had said he would. But it didn't matter because I already knew my people. And I knew something, I knew enough about them, not just that I would be able to come in every day and address them by name, but also that when they came to me, I would know something about their concerns and, their worries about fitting into our organization. And there was something that had happened before I joined. DBS had outsourced a tremendous amount of its technology to IBM. And it meant that my department was one of the last, that survived that outsource. So my people were very scared, and they see a new guy come in, mm-hmm. and he's a foreigner, and he's probably just going to shake everything up again. And they're scared for their jobs because they've seen a lot of their friends lose theirs. So, providing that kind of familiarity and consistency was very, very important. And it wound up, there was a lot of, animosity and bad blood in the start, but we managed to get through that very quickly.
Nice. That's fantastic advice, and I think people listening right now are taking notes. Building relationships one person at a time, and
that's right.
I guess remembering that the team is comprised by people who have fears, desires, pains, right? That
yeah.
And they're there for the project, but most of all, they're humans, and they have other priorities besides that. And if you can be sympathetic and helpful in that regard as well, then you kind of win a friend, I guess, and then it's a lot easier to get friends to work
exactly
on what you want than let's say a slave, that is there to do what you tell them to do. Very good, very good. I don't have a big team at work, but I feel like my the audience here of the podcast is like a team, because I was given the same advice by another podcaster who is really successful, and the advice was to go out there and find 50 people who listen to you, and their first name, their last name, something personal about them, and when you, in that process, you build your audience, and you create new relationships, and you make new friends, and it's so true. And the fact that he didn't ask you the question when he came back, a week later, he knew he was asking you, didn't he? Like, in that process of finding out who the people were, you would get the team to work together.
Exactly.
Very good. Now, Geoff, this is great information. So, since you are, one more question before we go into the PM for the Masses 6 questions. Mm-hmm. You are teaching now. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you started, and what the experience is like?
Well, it's been really, really cool. I didn't know that I would actually like teaching. My dad was a teacher, and I saw him, sort of have his hot and cold days when he would come home, and I just thought, maybe that's not for me. But one thing that happened, I went back to university. I'm pursuing a doctorate in clinical psychology, and I decided, tuition's kind of expensive, so I'm going to have to do something to make ends meet, while I'm studying. Anyway, it was kind of a roundabout story how I wound up at Durham. But once I did, I stood up there in front of my class for the first time. And as soon as I started speaking, all of a sudden I saw a room full of 30 people, and they were all kind of listening to me. It was like, wow. I teach right now. I'm teaching project quality management and project integration management. And, I applied the same things that I applied at work, with, all right, let's start making connections with the students, tell me something about you. I opened my door up in case they had any problems. And they started to take advantage of it. And once one did, they all told each other. And now my office is flooded every week with students who want to talk or have questions. And it's just this really dynamic, great, amazing experience. My first batch of students is graduating this year, and I'm going to go to their graduation, and it's going to be a big party.
Great. So, do you recommend, for example, we have Fanshawe College here in London and University of Western Ontario, and they both have project management programs. And I've toyed with the idea of teaching part time. Do you recommend that? Is that for everyone? And what are some of the benefits to the professional to go and teach?
I think if you're teaching, there's a lot of different reasons why people go and teach. For me, it's the people. It's always been about the people, and it's something that just teaching has just reinforced for me, is that interacting with others is just, I find it really, really rewarding. Helping people, but not everybody is concerned about that. Other people do it as a way to make PDUs. You can certainly get PDUs if you teach. And that helps perpetuate your PMP certification. There's if you're really into planning and creating, you have to come up with lesson plans. That can be, I find that very arduous, actually. But some people really enjoy that part of it. So there's a lot of really good, fun aspects to teaching, and sort of, capture a lot of different kinds of people.
Very great. Very good. Thank you. I will I'll look into that. It sounds like something I'd like to do at some point, and it's right here in town, and I like to get up and speak and have an audience, as you can tell. So and that would be a great way to have more of a human touch. They're right there in front of me instead of listening to me from around the world.
Cool.
Very cool. All right, let's get to the project management for the masses 6 questions.
Sure.
As the audience might have forgotten about this because it's been a few weeks since I last did it, but whenever I have a guest who is a successful project manager and has made a career in that field, I'd like to ask these 6 questions. And let's start with number 1. Number 1 is about the reason. So what made you start being more out there and becoming a well-known PM outside your place of employment?
Well, it was funny. I didn't really expect to be out there and becoming more known. What somebody had told me was that it's a good idea to put together a blog And blogging is a way to help let other people know about you and about your profession, and you can showcase your expertise. But the problem was I didn't really take it very seriously at first, right? I tend to have a very wry sense of humor, and I don't take very much that seriously. So, when I started blogging, it was mostly cartoons. I was making jokey types of things, and I didn't expect that anybody was actually reading them, but it turned out that other people were, and they were picking it up and sharing them and copying them around. So I thought, oh, wow, maybe I should get a little bit more, serious and not so flippant about my own profession. So I started writing articles that were a little more instructional, and I found that my reasons for writing changed over time. Because I've been doing this since about 2009, and year on year, I don't think I've blogged for the same reason in 2 consecutive years. Initially, I thought maybe I need to be a little more serious, so I took this pompous attitude with my writing, and it kind of showed. It was a little obnoxious. Then I started going back to the humor and sort of my base stuff. I was writing about soft skills because that was something that people really seemed to want to know about, and I was getting emails about. So I would write about my opinions there. When I started teaching, all of a sudden now I need to get back to more grassroots stuff. So I'm writing about, how to make a work breakdown structure, how to develop a communications plan, that kind of stuff, because that's stuff that my students need. And it's something that I can gear specifically towards them. And if other people want to partake of that, they're more than welcome. So yeah, I guess you could say I didn't take it very seriously at the start, but it just kind of hasn't really gone away.
And do you enjoy writing?
You know what? I have this like hot and cold relationship with it. Yes, I like writing, but I find it to be a great deal of work. And if I'm not in the mood to do it, it's very possible for me to stop writing for like 6 months at a time. And then I'll pick it up and there'll be this flurry of activity because I like it again, So it's a bit of this ambivalence.
Okay. And do you think having that online presence has helped your career?
I don't know that it has or hasn't. I think it's been fairly neutral from my perspective, but it has brought attention to the importance of soft skills, and that was something that I think is really important.
Very cool. Now, question number 2 is about failure. Can you share with us perhaps one of the times when you fell short, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this when you asked me that question before, what am I going to say? And, I thought about this one situation. I was working in Mississauga in Ontario on this just absolutely horrific check processing project. It was just ugly from morning till night. It was a brutal project. We were dealing with like incredibly aggressive deadlines and just a massive amount of complexity. But of all of that, I was still very pleased that we were actually able to make our dates, but we almost didn't. And there was, it turned out that I had a very large team there as well. I think that was about 50 or 60 people. And, you can't have that many direct reports. So obviously I was organized with 1s and 2 downs. And it turned out that there was one person on my team who had a very particular skill. And it was called sky coding. She was the only person in the entire organization who knew how to do this, but I didn't know that, right? So the problem is there's so many different side projects going on, while we're working on this program. She was getting pulled off to like a million different meetings all day, every day. So guess how much actual work she was doing? Well, kind of zero, because she's spending all of her time in meetings. And her boss thought I would be angry. So when I went to get status reports, he just said, no, everything's fine. Everything's great. And I believed him because I had no insight into his area. Anyway, I almost lost about 2 to 3 months off of the entire project schedule because of this. When I finally uncovered, oh my God, this one person is completely single threaded through the entire project. And she's not getting any work done because she's being pulled in too many different directions. I can't have this. So what I wound up doing was putting together a skills matrix, and it was just a simple little self-assessment. But I ran it through everybody in my organization. And when I get them back, I would check, how are people, am I single threaded on any particular skills? Do I need to beef them up? And once I found out that there was a shortage, I was able to go out and get more bodies who knew how to do this particular skill and fill them in. But because I didn't know that, I was single threaded on one particular skill, I almost blew the whole project.
So the lesson here is not to be single threaded on any skill in a project, or be just more manage that closely.
I think it's a lot more managed closely. So being single threaded on one particular skill is very, very dangerous. But the problem is I didn't know that I was single threaded. I had no transparency through my organization. And that's the thing. That's the key right there, is making sure that you really do have a good handle on everything that's happening, in your area.
Mm-hmm. Great. Now, question number 3 is about breaking through. And you shared a little bit about this, the reason why you started your blog and the reason why you started teaching and how you got into project management. But what are the steps that you took? A lot of people think about starting a blog. A lot of people think about, started teaching and doing the things that you've done successfully, but they don't. So what are the steps that you took to kind of get moving in that direction?
Well, it wasn't, I don't know that I did a whole lot really. It was, I started writing blog articles, and I honestly didn't think that anybody was reading them. But then somebody turned me on to Twitter, so I got on Twitter and just started reaching out to people. One thing that I found was the important thing is just get out there and start having conversations. It doesn't really matter who's listening or, whatever. Just start conversations with people. And I found that on Twitter, people would actually respond. And as soon as they start responding, then they start to share. And that was very interesting experience. So that's really kind of how I got the audience that I did. It was a lot more passive. I wasn't doing your very good idea about, going out and finding 50 people who would read my stuff. I didn't really know what I was doing, to be honest, when I started.
Hey, it worked.
it worked. So, you could call that the Forrest Gump strategy to self-marketing.
Run, Forrest, run.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. You did well. And I started to talk about your website earlier, and I don't know, I got sidetracked, but your website is really cool. It's very different. I think it's purple or pink,
yes.
Which is not very very common color in corporate world. It's very, very well done, and there's a video there that explains, part of your philosophy there, and I think that helps as well, because when you land there, you said, okay, this is a friendly guy, and obviously he has a lot to share. There's a lot of people posting there, questions. I know some of your students interact with you there as well.
Yeah.
So having a friendly online presence, I think, helps a lot too.
I agree. But thank you very much.
No problem. All right, let's talk about the question number 4, which is personal productivity. Do you have any tools or techniques that you use? Because you obviously have a lot on your plate. So how do you keep on top of everything?
Yeah, I'm not really too sure how to answer this question. I don't really have any particular tools that I use. I can be a bit obsessive with Excel. I obviously use Microsoft Project a lot. But even for project, unless I'm working on a particular project, that's sort of a tool I keep parked over there for work stuff. For the most part, I guess I just make staying organized really sort of my first priority. I don't know if I can use this analogy, but I'm a bit of a video game junkie. And so I've been playing World of Warcraft for a long time. It's not as cool as it used to be, but if I can use this example, the point of the game is to get your friends together and you go off and you kill monsters. Now, it makes sense generally, because the monsters fight back, to bring along a healer. And that healer, their job is just keep everybody alive and keep everybody going. If the healer doesn't prioritize keeping themselves alive first, then they will die, and then so will the rest of the team really quickly. So I know this is a little out there, but my position with organization has always been, I have to prioritize keeping myself organized first before I do anything else, before I look at any work stuff, before I look at any relationship stuff, managing stakeholders or whatever. None of it matters unless I'm organized first. Once I am, then I can go out there and I can start looking after all of my other things. And staying organized is just a simple matter of just, updating my documents as I go. if I wind up in a position where I have to, I've been too work focused for too long, may wind up in a position where I have to spend, an entire afternoon doing nothing but document updates, because I've let myself get behind. And when that happens, if I'm losing a half an hour, half an afternoon to document updates, something bad's going to happen during that time, and I won't be available to prevent it. So that's kind of my philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like putting your mask on first before you can help other people with their masks.
Exactly. That's a better analogy.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So, but you talk about staying organized. How do you stay organized? Because things pile up, right? Emails and requests for interviews for podcasts, things like that. How do you manage all that? How do you stay organized?
It's not that difficult. I mean, I tend to keep lists. I keep lots of lists. My Excel skills are a bit, freakish.
Oh yeah, okay.
Really, it's just a matter of keeping good lists. I will say I have a particular viewpoint about email, and I refuse to use it for work. Now I'm kind of lucky. I got a student asked me about this a while ago, and I'm kind of lucky in that I'm at a place in my career when I can just say I don't use email to communicate work-related stuff. And she asked me, how can we do that when we're just starting? And if you're just starting out, you probably don't have that kind of leverage. But I find that email is a very, very dangerous tool. People, I don't know why we have this assumption, because we all have difficulty managing our own email inboxes. We just automatically assume that nobody else in the world has that problem. So, it's like, well, I sent you an email. What, didn't you get it? What's wrong with you? It's like, I have the same problem that you do. Also, I found it at Intria when I was, or at this check processing project when I was there, I would be talking on the phone and also cycling through my email. And there would be this preview pane. And as I scrolled through, if something caught my attention on the phone, I would scroll past an email. It would get marked as unread, and I would never have actually seen it. Yet it's marked as unread, so I'm never going to go back to it. So it's a very dangerous tool in terms of being kept in, if you need to be kept informed. So make sure everybody knows, don't email Geoff with anything important. You pick up the phone and you call him. That's exactly how it must work. If I don't get a phone call, then obviously it couldn't have been that important. But again, I'm at a point in my career where I can say that, and people will respect that. For new people, just starting out, that's going to be harder.
And it goes the other way as well. Do you just call people if you need to get them?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. If I need to talk to somebody, I'm going to talk to them. Like, I'm not going to send them an email and hope they get it, and then a week goes by and nothing happens. Yeah. I'm big on the phone.
Great. Well,
even better, I like face to face. So if it's possible, I'm just going to get in my car and drive over. Hi, I'm here. Great.
Yeah. And email is tone deaf as well, right? So it's hard to convey emotion and tone with text only. Okay. That's good advice and very countercultural. All right, question number 5 is about networking. So what's the best way you found to network with people when at events or at work or at school?
So I'll be honest, I'm a really lousy networker. I know there are people out there who are really, really good at it. And coming from somebody who professes being good at soft skills, to say you're a bad networker is probably, a bit of egg on my face. But what I've learned about it is, if I'm going to network effectively, I need to do stuff of my own goodwill to just make other people's lives just a little better. It doesn't have to be great, big, sweeping, massive gestures. Those are a bit creepy, but just little things. And I found, if I'm going to go out of my way to do that, that tends to reap the greatest benefits. I was thinking when you asked me this question, and I remembered this time when I first moved to Singapore. I didn't know anybody at all, but I did know the guy that I would be working with because we had met in Tokyo. So he arrived and we were staying at the same hotel, and it was a Sunday. So, we weren't really going into work or anything. And I was kind of like, yeah, it's going to suck if I don't know anybody here. And you know what? He's probably feeling the exact same thing because we're all going to be there, the same length of time. So I called up to his room and I said, hey, I heard there's a great zoo here in Singapore. Do you just want to go? And I think he wasn't really too sure how to take that, but it wasn't like it was a big deal. Like, it was just the zoo, right? But it really turned out to be awesome. We went to the zoo together. He realized, I'm not all by myself here. There's somebody else, that I can talk to. And it made him feel a little bit better and me feel a little bit better. And all of a sudden, there's sort of the seeds of a really good relationship. Now, I will say that there was a downside that he kind of thought that he could take liberties. So he started calling down in my room at 5 a.m. saying, hey, Cupcake, it's time to go to work. And you're sort of like, oh my God, I'm going to stick a fork in my eye. But it wound up, he gave me this terrific recommendation, which turned on the next 10 years of my career. So it's little things I think make a huge, huge difference.
I'm sure there's a metaphor in there somewhere about comparing networking events in the zoo.
Probably.
Very good. Now, Geoff, just to wrap things up here, the question number 6 is about your tip. So for those listening right now who want to take what they're doing in their career or in their project, take whatever they're doing up a notch and to a new level. So what is your tip?
I think it would have to be, that time is flexible. I was thinking about this when you asked that. I know a guy, I'm not going to say his real name, we'll call him Bob. Now, Bob is a guy that I worked with on this really, really horrific project, and the man knew everything. I mean, he was 60 years old. He knew everything about the project domain, right? He not just what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, but he knew like all of the reasons that underlay every single step. This was really important. Unfortunately, Bob had absolutely abysmal communication skills. Like talking to him was just brutal. He would sort of be really slow and go off on these like random tangents, and you'd have to bring him all back. It's like, dude, you have to get with the program. I need information. Working with Bob was a real eye-opener for me because I'm under a tremendous amount of stress, and everybody is freaking out all around me. This was a 500-person project. There are bodies all over the place, and people yelling, and the phones are ringing. And what I needed to do to be able to get the information that I wanted from him was to just slow time right down to a crawl, and sit and give him my full undivided attention, forget everything else, and just listen and ask lots of questions and bring him back from tangents. 30 minutes with Bob saved weeks and weeks of problems on my project. But getting that information meant I had to change my own approach. And it was really unfortunate. I attribute Bob to be the reason that our project was successful. It was having the information that I was able to get from him just prevented so many risks. And after I left the project, the overall program continued on. And I found out that the other project managers didn't really have much of a use for Bob. And I found that really, really sad because I think they lost their single greatest asset. But they couldn't deal with, having to slow their personal time down to be able to work with him. And I just thought that was very unfortunate. There are gems hidden in the people all around you, and you need to be able to put your own issues aside and find them for yourself. So I guess that would be my tip.
Fantastic tip. Awesome. Now, thank you, Geoff. That's great stuff. Now, Geoff, for people who are listening and they want to know more about you, where should they go?
You can go to my blog. It's papercutpm.com.
And you're on Twitter as well.
Yep. Also papercutpm. I'm kind of papercutpm everywhere.
Very good. Easy to remember. Geoff, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you sharing your story and your tips here with us.
Thank you very much, Caesar.
You are listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed my friendly conversation there with Geoff Crane. As you can tell, Geoff has lots to share when it comes to getting people to work together. And I really believe that in this information age that we live in and where we are knowledge workers, I think this is probably the best skill you can have today. It's not something you learn from a book, you learn from experience. And it's, if you have that, it really sets you apart. So I recommend you work on your soft skills and get in touch with Geoff and check out his website at papercutpm.com. geoff.com. He's a great resource, and the sense of humor is really great, and it's the website's really well put together, and I really recommend it. So how about you? How do you tackle and improve on your soft skills? What is your secret sauce? This is such a non-exact science that I don't really believe that there is a simple recipe. So I would love to know what has worked for you, and what are some of the challenges that you have faced in developing your people skills. Geoff has he had some great tips for us today, and I'm sure there are many of you listening right now who could add to this discussion. So please go on to pmforthemasses.com/38, which is the show notes for today's episode. Again, pmforthemasses.com/38, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you regarding this topic, and tell me a little bit about your thoughts on soft skills. All right, I'd like to thank all of you who gave me feedback following my last 2 episodes on writing books. Great feedback, fantastic, and it's great to see how many of you out there have thought about writing books or have already written 1 or 2 or a few. Just to give you feedback here, I'm currently working on a plan on how I'm going to do this. As you remember, there is a little bit of an investment of time and resources, and you guessed it. This is going to be I'm going to treat this as a project. So I'll be able to share a lot of that process with you as I move forward here. So just be patient a little bit as I get my thoughts in order or on how I'm going to get started. And you can bet there's going to be an episode or 2 devoted to that process of my book. So stay tuned. Now, before I go today, I'd like to thank all the reviews that I've had in iTunes for this show, including the latest one by Bill Boville in Australia, who left me a great review there. Thank you, Bill, and thank you all who have done this. It really helps the show, as I've shared before. So if you have not done so, please consider leaving Project Management for the Masses a review in iTunes, and you need to have the iTunes software in your computer. I wish there was an easier way by just going to a website, but you need to, if you don't have iTunes on your computer, you need to go download and go through the motions there. You don't have to have an Apple computer. You can do it on Windows as well, but if you could do that, that would be fantastic. And the more reviews I have, the better the show will rank, and the more people I can reach. So that's it for the show today. So go out there, flex your soft skills muscles, and I will talk to you again next week. And until then, remember that life is a project, and you, my friend, are the manager. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you for listening to the PM for the Masses podcast.
Tune in next week for more great ideas on how to manage your projects better and truly stand out in your industry.
pmforthemasses.com